Welcome to Comic Book Corner. I'm Dan DiLatorre. Thanks for joining this evening. There's a lot of things I wanted to discuss this evening. A lot of things have happened in the comic book industry. Let's start right here with the firing of Jonathan Majors from the MCU about a month ago. Majors got himself into an altercation with his former girlfriend, a woman by the name of Grace Jabari. And apparently what was going on was that they were out having a few drinks and so forth, and things seemed to have gotten out of hand. Not terribly out of hand, but it was enough for the authorities to be called in. Now, once this happened, the MCU immediately started making the suggestion that there might be a replacement for Jonathan Majors. And I thought that was really, really unfair. And I think they jumped the gun on that, no pun intended, regarding that they should let the law play out, let this whole scene play out. We had all fallen in love with his character, Kang the Conqueror. This is a young man that had a bright, bright future, still, I think, possibly has a bright future. And with a great career right in front of him, this is the last thing he needed. Now, once this announcement came down from the MCU, they did play a wait and see finally regarding the judgment regarding this situation going to court. As you know, it was a New York court, and he was found guilty of misdemeanor charges. The MCU immediately fired him, and they started to look for a replacement. I have a number of problems with this particular judgment and the way this whole thing came down. Let me try to break it down as best I can. Majors has had no prior criminal record that I can find, not even a speeding ticket as far as I can tell. He has no past history of troubles or anything else. And he got into a situation with his former girlfriend. This is her here. This is that Grace Jabari woman that filed charges against Majors. Now, as I looked at the details of it, and it's getting into my opinion here, this was a minor, altercation, maybe a little pushing and shoving is the most that actually happened here. Majors is not a small man; he's a big man, very, very, very strong and powerful. But sometimes you get into a situation where these things get out of hand. Now, the charges were filed against Majors, and the actual charges were third-degree misdemeanor charges of assault. I mean, this wasn't assault and battery. He didn't beat her senseless, and she was knocked out, hospitalized. She went out drinking afterwards, according to all the other information and evidence. It all seems to be pointing in Jonathan Majors' favor. But my biggest problem is this. I've never heard of someone losing their entire career over third-degree misdemeanor charges, which are, again, these are the least serious charges you could possibly bring to court, to my understanding. I mean, everyone else would get a slap on the wrist, if anything else. Major's whole career is gone because of this. I think the MCU really, really went way overboard with their removing of this character. Very, very talented actor, and his career, again, is basically over. Now, they based the decision, the MCU did, on the outcome of the trial. And again, it came down to some of the charges were dismissed, he was found guilty. Now his lawyers and Majors himself want to file an appeal, but the MCU made that decision based on the outcome. So they said he's fired, he's done. What if his lawyers get those charges overturned in a new trial? Look, the way it works with the court, you never know what's going to happen. Some things totally work against you, depending on the judge, depending on the lawyers, your lawyers, and the prosecution. There's all sorts of variations that happen. But if Jonathan Majors' lawyers do overturn that decision, will the MCU reinstate him? The answer is no. They've already made up their mind. I think that's completely wrong. Again, there's something. What bothers me is there's some other element that I can't figure out here. Something is not right with this whole thing. Again, I have never ever heard of the destruction of someone's career on minor charges. Something is very, very wrong here. I think the MCU is playing this extremely poorly. Now, you contrast that. Now, by the way, before I get to my comparison here, there's one other thing. I guess I'll say, to be fair to the MCU, they may have a policy where they want none of their actors or actresses to get into any trouble whatsoever. It may be in their contract. I don't know. I'm not privy to his or anybody else's contract. Also, there is a double standard here, because this character here, Ezra Miller from the DC universe, he has a history of trouble. He's been seen a number of times being arrested, fighting, drunken in public, and he also has a whole variety of charges above him, some very, very serious charges of underage sex and maybe even more. These are extremely serious charges that this young man has, and he's got a troubled past. But that didn't stop James Gunn and David Zaslav, the people in charge of the DCU to move forward with his movie. Now, let's just say that these charges, which they're still under investigation, these sort of things take years to reveal themselves regarding the investigation and the court process. Let's say he is found guilty of these things. What does that say of Zaslav and James Gunn? Because they profited off of this young man, knowing the things that were above his above his head that he still has to deal with. Now, I'm aware that these are two different companies. The DCU and MCU are owned by two different companies. I understand that, and they could be running a very, very different, a different type of not security, but a way of allowing their giving leeway to one actor or another, or one company or another. I'd have to, again, see the contracts and the agreements and what was already said and signed before they got on the big screen. But I think that if it was Kevin Feige, and I don't know if it was him, it was his legal team or whoever it is that made the decision from Marvel or the MCU to fire Ezra Miller, I think they've gone way, way overboard. And again, I'm outraged. I'm angry that this young man's career is done from something that probably he had no control over. So I hope if it is overturned, let's say he is scheduled for an appeal in about a month or two. If he does get that overturned, my recommendation to Jonathan Majors, he sues the MCU. Because again, he can sue them for a whole variety of reasons. Defamation of character, for one, because that judgment was based on that one court decision from a lesser court for misdemeanor charges. So I wouldn't let... If I'm Jonathan Majors, I wouldn't let this go. I hope he returns it some way, some form. Again, I'm basing this. I'm not supporting abuse on any level. I don't want anyone to think that I am. But I'm looking at the raw facts of this case. Looking at this, there's no previous priors to Jonathan Majors, and the very harsh. Again, this is life-changing for the MCU to be ending his career as early as it is. I think this is an outrage. I wouldn't give up. I still want Majors to come back. And I'm the only one saying this, by the way. Everyone seems to have accepted Jonathan Majors' departure as, well, he shouldn't have done that, and now he's gone. You haven't looked at the facts. And if you haven't looked at the facts and you've gone to see the Flash movie and you had no problem with that, you might want to rethink your ethics and rethink your thinking here, because, again, there's a clear double standard in this particular industry, and I wish all the best for Jonathan Majors. I want him to come back to the big screen, because unless there's something else that hasn't been brought forward, that's what I see, and that's what should happen. Let's go on to another very sore subject with everyone, and that is the latest scandal from CGC. Now, I won't bore you with all the details. We've had some of our good friends, Swaggelhaus, Drew from Coma's Comics, who is Ryan from Automatic Comics, and even Thoro. They've all done a great job educating everyone and keeping everyone up to speed on this latest scandal from CGC. The bottom line, the basic story is that some person or persons have allegedly found a way to sneak out very, very expensive comics into a different slab, sent them to CGC for re-slabbing, and then they put them on the market. Well, someone found out that they were up to no good, and they found the wrong comic in these different slabs and so forth. Here's the problem that I see here. Now, again, with respect to my colleagues that I just mentioned, they're not seeing everything, and they haven't reported on everything. And maybe it's because I'm much older and I see things from life experience. I see a few things that they haven't seen. First and foremost, CGC has never addressed any of the issues that they've had. We all know that they've had a number of problems over the last 4 or 5 years with mistakes, wrong labels, questionable grading, to say the least. Now, to set this up, let's do it this way. Quick little timeline. How did CGC come to being in the first place? They had an idea to come up and create a system where they professionally grade a comic. They put it into a plastic capsule. They put a label on it, and they certify it saying, this is what it is, this is what its grade is, and send it off to the market. Like any company, they started kind of small because their original blue label in their first slab was very, very unattractive. It didn't take off until a couple years when they got their second generation slab and their second generation label, which is much more attractive. Bottom line was they started to gain traction because people started to recognize the value of this sort of thing. In the old days, when you had a comic, you would have to look at your old Overstreet price guide. The Overstreet guide would give you a general idea of what to look for, how to grade it, and so forth. Back then, it was they'd use terms like good, very good, fine, that sort of thing. And then you still have to haggle out the value and the grade with your comic shop or wherever else you're buying it from. CGC, by being very precise, very methodical and very exacting with their grading and with what was in the capsule, started to gain trust in the comic community. You didn't question their grade. If it was an 8.5, it was an 8.5. It had white pages. That was written in stone back in the days when you could trust CGC. They changed the entire market by how precise they were and how trustworthy they were. They dominated. By the time they came up with a third generation slab, which is a gorgeous slab they still use to this day, they had absolutely dominated the market that they had created. Several other companies tried to get into the action. They still to this day can't match CGC. Now what's happened is this, and this is something we reported on the Ian Hoodrat network about 1.5 years ago. What CGC ran into, the biggest problem they had was that they had growing pains. Like any successful company, they became too successful. And not every company can deal with success on a proper level. Sometimes they miscalculate and they go overboard, or they go under. Now, what CGC did, what they should have done actually, because what was people started to notice after maybe 15, 16 years or so of them being in business, people would send comics into their company. And instead of the 3-month turnaround, it was a 6-month turnaround, or a 9-month turnaround, or a year turnaround. Sometimes they forgot their comics. They lost their comics. Mistakes started to show up over and over and over again. They started to make a number of mistakes. And instead of clamping down on those and keeping what made them famous in the first place, they decided to continue this expansion by taking $500 million in a loan from this company, Blackstone. Blackstone is a hedge fund company. Some say a very aggressive hedge fund company. Some would say a very vulture capitalist company. They're quite aggressive. But CGC decided that that was the right course of action to expand and deal with the situation that they had grown into. So by taking this $500 million advance from Blackstone again it's not a small company. They want a very sizable return. Who knows how big the return is? Maybe they want another 500 million or more in return by the time it's all said and done. It depends on the contract that Blackstone and CGC signed. But regardless, CGC is now under obligation to pay this back. Now, most likely, and I just was playing with the numbers here to keep up with the demand, mostly the financial demand, CGC has to produce tens of thousands of slabs a week. Think about that. Can you imagine the operation they must have? Because they only had a small operation in Florida. I told them years ago that they should have expanded to the West Coast, the Midwest, even Canada, if there's a market for it, and there clearly is. They refused to do so. Instead, they simply bought a larger building, hired some more people. We don't know how qualified they are. I tend to doubt, and I think a lot of people tended to doubt how qualified they were, because the mistakes continue to happen and continue to get worse. And on top of that, 1.5 years ago, when we reported that CGC changed their particular way that they're going to grade things, you could, for example, and I forget how they did this, you can get a green labeled comic, make an alteration, and turn that into a blue label comic. Swaggelhaus had a Hulk 2 from 1962 that he bought, that was formerly a green label, and they made some modifications and it became a blue label. That was wrong. That was completely wrong. And I said so at the time, and I said, look, this is not going to end well unless they change their direction. CGC ignored any advice from myself or anyone else. Not that they're going to, look at myself as a great arbiter of anything, but again, I was not wrong. Because now you had acetate gate, and now you have this particular situation here with this person or persons somehow figured out how to get these comics in and out of a slab where CGC wouldn't find out about it. Now, obviously, and again, these are all accusations, speculation, right? Right now, I'm not making any accusations right now because these are all allegations, I should say. I have no proof whatsoever. I'm simply going on what the experts are saying and what CGC is saying. Whoever did this obviously knew what they were doing. They had to have had an understanding of plastics, solvents, and adhesives. And they must have done, and I'm going on the logical way to have done this, to do their research to pull this off. They had to do some trial and error. So they got some lower grade slabs, most likely cut those out, played around with the idea. And once they perfected it, they probably sent off very low grade comics to get reslabbed. And once that was successful and it triggered no red flags, they started to step up their game and put very more expensive, high caliber 9.8s, Stanley signed, rare grails, that sort of thing. And they did this over and over and over again until finally they got caught. Now, the thing is, we have no idea how long this has happened. So now what's going on with CGC, they have never ever addressed any element of mistakes from their company. This is the first time they made any campaign or any verbal response to say that we are going to fix the problem that is fallen upon us right now. So that's red flag right there, because having just ignored all the problems up until now, it seems to me they're scared. They're very scared because, again, they must maintain that tens of thousands of slabs per week to fulfill their financial obligation, because if they don't, that's going to cause trouble. Now, again, these investigations could take years. You had Matt Nelson give an interview not that long ago. Matt Nelson, who started out, I mean, everyone loved this guy because of the idea he and others came up with, and again, the quality that they put into these things. But that interview didn't do him any favors. He probably should have just stayed home. He said a number of things that were red flags right then and there. He said, one, they are focusing in on the regrading element of their company. And the idea is, if you can talk to the people, who knows how many work in that department, if they don't know what to look for, this is the first place to address the issue, and hopefully this comes to an end. I can't complain about that, but everyone knows that's not the real issue here. That's only part of the issue here. He was also asked about, is he going to change, or is his company going to change the type of slab? He avoided the question. The answer is no, he's not going to change the slab, because why would you get rid of a slab that millions of people love and they expect to see? That would take redesigning. That would take a lot of money and a lot of time, which they don't have. Again, by taking all this money, they have put themselves in a financial bind. That they brought this upon themselves. This is what I referred to a year and a half ago. So they'll have to come up with some sort of security measures here. What that is, I don't know. But in the meantime, other YouTube comic commentators have speculated, using common sense, that two things. One, what if this person or persons weren't the only people that figured this out? I mean, if you put your mind to it, it's not that hard to do. And also, so if other situations pop up, this looks really, really bad for CGC and for Matt Nelson himself, because again, he's trying to quiet this down. What they want this to do is simply to go away. They want this to go away. It's not going to go away. So the other thing too is that others have said, this isn't CGC's problem. They are blaming the people or the person or persons behind this whole thing. Now, that's not necessarily true, because if you have a criminal mindset, wouldn't you wait for the right opportunity, the opportunity where you can pull this sort of thing without anyone noticing? The time would be now. The time would be when I alerted, and everyone else alerted, the comic community a year and a half ago, that this would not work well unless they stop what they were doing. They put themselves again in such a bind where there's no way they can possibly stop and re-examine each and every comic as it goes through their system. They have obviously eliminated that element of it, and now they're in trouble. This could be a major, major disaster for them, and they could lose billions of dollars by the time this is all said and done. This was a horrible mistake. I said so at the time, and now it's come to fruition. What's going to happen right now? Who knows? Who knows? But again, if they're making all these comments here, they are very, very scared, because the first response that they made was a written statement. And one of the things that they said was something I caught that nobody else caught. They said, to date, CGC or CCG, which is their parent company, have graded and slabbed 85 million articles. Most of those are comics, but some are like, rare coins, that sort of thing. Who knows what else they get into? They're not a small company. They're a huge company. And they have completely forgotten what got them famous in the first place and got them trusted in the first place, their quality and the reliability. Now that's gone. It's absolutely very, very much gone, and they know it, and they are scared right now. So there'll be more if this continues, and you'll see more responses from CGC if their numbers start to go down. If they can't maintain that thousands and thousands per week, and that starts to slowly dip, the one thing that the comic collector, needs to be very, very aware of is this: CGC could go bankrupt. It could happen overnight. Don't think that it can't, by the way. I'm in the trades, by the way. I saw there was a story a week or so ago that a large paint store called Cullimore, they were mostly on the West Coast and the Midwest and a few on the East Coast. They had 157 different outlets. They closed their doors overnight. Excuse me. They had no warning, no nothing, no, hey, we're going to close out off in a month. No, they had financial obligations due to a whole variety of problems that they couldn't solve, and they just said they shut everything down. All their stores are completely closed, and thousands of people are out of work. CGC is in the same type of danger. Don't think that it couldn't happen. Now, if it does happen, this is how I like to think about things. If something the size of CGC shuts down, what do? You are stuck. You put all your eggs into one basket. You can't send your comics for reslabbing. You can't obviously get any new grading from CGC. They're gone. They'll close their doors. They won't honor anything. And if the obligations that they're now looking at for compensating with these poor people who bought and sold some of these very high-profile comics, if they file bankruptcy, that will also include not paying those people back, because that's what bankruptcy is. They absolve themselves of any financial doing or any wrongdoing, and they do this in court. So this is a very precarious time for CGC. And you know what? You guys were warned. You were warned on this channel, the E and Hoodrat network. You should have listened to me, and you didn't. And now you may pay a hard price, and everyone may go down the ship with it. So again, excuse me, what do you do without CGC? There are other companies that have been floating for the longest time. Probably the closest successor is CBCS. They've been around for a long time. I have no problem with CBCS. I have a number of slabs from CBCS. I think they're a fine grading company. They have a reputation of being a little more lenient than CGC. I do like the fact that they were the first to do signatures by verification, and most notably for people that passed away long before CGC opened its doors, like Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby died, I think, in the 90s. And so there's no possible way to do a verified signature. The biggest problem I'm hearing from CBCS, from my colleagues, is that the customer service is horrid. They're absolutely horrid. You call them, if they pick up the phone, they'll give you the runaround. They won't get back to you, that sort of thing. Look, you have to have customer service. You have to talk to your customers, and you have to have a good rapport with your customers, or else they start going away. CBCS should have moved up much quicker than they did, but I think this is the biggest element and biggest handicap that they put upon themselves by not moving and taking more of a larger piece of the pie, if you will, with the slabbing market. PGX, by the way, that's a company that damaged its reputation a long time ago, is still in business, by the way. And they're actually doing quite well, by the way. They're doing thousands of slabs a week, to my understanding. They had created a situation for themselves where they damaged their own reputation. The sad thing is that the owner didn't bother to try and clean up his reputation, which, in my mind, if that person doesn't want to clean up your reputation, I'm not going to go to you. Why? Why should I bother? If you're too lazy to stand up for yourself and stand up for something that you believe in, or stand up for your personal beliefs or a reputation, I'm not going to waste my time with you. Now, I have been, over the last year or so, almost a one-man cheering section for Tony Trombetta and EGS Comics. EGS Comics is something Tony introduced himself to the community a few years ago. He's very old school like I am. We had him on the show about a year and a half ago or so, and he was making his appeal. He just made the transition from his first slab to a second generation slab, and there it is right there to the right. I have since sent all my comics, all my gradable comics, to EGS, and I've become a one-man cheering section. And I've been receiving some praise, but a lot of hate emails, a lot of hate text. People, for whatever reason, despise, and they're making accusations about people like myself, Chris from Journos, even Reggie collects that Tony is paying us money to sponsor his company or promote his company. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I accused this one person. I said, look, if you're going to make that accusation, you better prove it. That's slander. They didn't care. I mean, you have to deal with trolls, and it's really, really unfortunate. The thing with Tony is that he's been honest and open about who he is, what he has to offer, and how much he has to work with here. He has said over and over again that he has thousands of dollars. He started with thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars, like some of these bigger companies. And as a small business owner myself, I can personally relate. I posted something. I'm a cabinet furniture finisher, restorer, and I posted a piece I was very proud of on Instagram. I should have brought it here. But it was a professionally done piece. It was perfectly done. Why? Because I have decades and decades of experience. But my overhead is very, very low. I have a small little one-man operation, but that doesn't mean the quality of what you get from me is less than expected. You would expect someone like myself who has a lot of experience to produce a quality product, which I do. The same can be said for Tony Trombetta. I don't care if he's working in a garage. Who cares? I'm paying money for his expertise, the beautiful presentation that he has, his second generation slab, which is what he has right here. It's certainly much better than his first generation, but I equate that to him being where CGC was about 15, 16 years ago when they got to their second generation slab. But the thing with the EGS currently is I trust them. What is on that label is in that slab. That is something you can't say about CGC. They have destroyed their reputation and they brought this upon themselves. By the way, we'll have Tony on later on for another subject. But I wish Tony all the best. We'll see what happens moving forward with this whole scandal. And again, it's the latest scandal that they had after acetate, and who knows what else is going to happen. But it's a very, very uncertain time for the comic community. All right, let's get to our picks of the week. And the picks are not, because going back to the MCU, they're all over the place regarding their direction. Specking is very, very suspect. You don't know if it's going to be a good movie, if it's going to be, like, who was it? Oh, the second generation, second Loki show had a character called Zaniac. Zaniac appeared one time in a Thor movie. I have the issue. I paid 60 cents for it. I probably overpaid for it back in the day. But people started to buy things like that. I mean, there's no reason to spec anymore. I'm just buying because of the down economy, how inexpensive a lot of these comics are. I'm just looking for deals. So until further notice, these picks are what I picked up of recently. If you have patience, if you save your money, and you look for the right opportunity. Let's start right here. The first one here, this is actually a gift, actually. I had bought some comics. I don't know if I showed them on the last episode, from our good friend, Hoodratville. He's a guest on the show. He's a friend. And this is Marvel Superheroes number 15. These are square-bound books, and they're really underrated. There's usually an original story there. I believe that's the first solo Medusa cover in Marvel Comics. And the cool thing with these, and again, they're very inexpensive, is that you get a lot of Golden Age, you get a lot of Golden Age reprint stories here. So they're just fun to have, inexpensive, and again, worth your time. And they're just great to have in your collection, because again, these are very, very Silver Age. And if you can get them in good condition, because again, they're square bound, I'd certainly hold on to these. I have several more to get. I probably have about 5 or 6. I want to get the entire run. It's totally worth it. Next, we got this one that has been it's been escaping me for the longest time. Everyone knows I'm the biggest Defenders fan, and I got this from Swaggle, and that is Luke Cage, Hero for Hire #1, first appearance of Power Man. Now, I've wanted that for the longest time, but the prices were really, really expensive. But this is probably a 4.0. I got this on Swaggle claim sale, and he said for $175 you can have it. I couldn't pass it up, and now it's something I can say it is in my collection. And here, come on, Luke Cage is a character that very much is growing in the MCU ever since the Netflix Defenders, which I don't think that was a great Defender series, by the way, but I like the character. And to be totally honest, I like the cover of this more than the comic itself. The story wasn't that great. I wasn't all that thrilled with the artwork, just to be honest with you. But this was this is towards the tail end of the Silver Age, but I got it for a great price. And again, first appearances are what you want. And take a second look at the Luke Cage Hero for Hire series, especially the one with him with Dr. Doom. One of the best stories I've ever read, and a great, great cover. Next, we have this one here to the left is Captain. I've fallen in love with the Golden Age, and I'm picking them off one by one as I find them, especially if I find a great deal. To the left is Captain Marvel Adventures, and I think it's number 46. I forget what that was here, but it's a restored grade. Yes, it's CGC. But I trust the purple labels because that more than what's the CGC is pushing out today, because that it says minor color touch up, and I would agree with that here. But look at the gorgeous cover. That is true Captain Marvel with all the his associates and his villains on that particular cover. It presents a lot prettier than 5.5. It's more of a 7.5, I would think. Why did CGC knock it down by 2 grades? Simple. It has water damage. Not a lot of water damage, but if you have water damage, most slabbing companies will knock off 2 points. I'm not certain why. I'm not being an expert on paper, but that was a beautiful, beautiful comic. And the most beautiful thing about it, the price. I got it from a guy in the UK for $135. I'm stunned. It was absolutely a beautiful comic. I'm seeing these on eBay for about 400 or so. I'd like to get a low-grade copy, a reader's copy, to see what the story is about because it's so fun. I have some other very low-grade Captain Marvel comics, so that's something I'm always on the lookout for. To the right is Wiz Comics #2. Long story. The first 4 comics were all said Wiz Comics #1, but the 1, 2, 3, and 4 are labeled differently. But that's Wiz Comics #2. That's the facsimile cover I got last year of the first appearance of Captain Marvel. I was stunned to get it. I love getting these facsimile covers because there's no way you can afford the Golden Age first appearances of anybody. So to have these facsimile covers are a lot of fun, and I'd like to get a few more of those just to have a reader's copy to see how it was back in the day. However, I did, thanks to my lovely wife who got me an early birthday present, I did track this particular one down. Speaking of first appearances, I did get not the entire comic, but I did get one page of this comic, Wiz Comics #2, that one right there. That is page 29 of Wiz Comics #2, the first appearance of Captain Marvel. That Captain Marvel isn't in that particular page, but I did a side by side of that same facsimile book to show the page. There it is. There, the top is obviously the one from 1940, and it has been identified. It's classified as slightly brittle pages, but it's perfectly preserved in that CGC slab. I'm taking a very close look, and not a second look, because I really never looked closely in the first place of pages. Now they've got my interest. If you can find one that is affordable, like that one certainly was. That was only $230. That was a steal. I got that one at my comic shop on eBay. Very reliable source, also known as what are they called? Oh, the name escapes me. But A1 Comics and my comic shop, a very reliable comic shops, and you need to have reliability these days. $230 was an incredible steal. I'm looking at getting some of the first appearances of my Amazing Fantasy 15 and Hulk 1. They are affordable. If I can get them, I will get them because I'm like most people. I don't have the tens of thousands of dollars to get the first appearances of AF-15 or Hulk 1, and I certainly don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to get my hands on a genuine Wiz Comics #2, first Captain Marvel, or anybody else from the Golden Age. Everyone, in the next episode, I'm hoping to get Tony Trombetta back on the airwaves here. We had him a year and a half ago to explain what was going on with his company and the slab company in general when CGC started making its changes. We've become friends, and I've talked to him a number of times off air. He has a number of my comics that he's grading. Hopefully I'll have those by the time the next episode. But he has trying to expand his company. He's run into something that shocked both of us. And I don't want to say anything. Well, this will be a teaser for the next episode. But he's revealed something that some of these other companies, CGC, CBCS, and a few others, shouldn't be doing. But I'll leave that to Tony Trombetta. Everyone, thanks for joining. For the Ian Hoodrat Network, I'm Dan Delatorre, and this is Comic Book Corner.